Training Center in Communication. And it is an honor to have you here at this webinar that we are hosting, where we are trying to influence change. Those of us in the Global South are trying to influence change by reframing university rankings and how this can influence our visibility and how open science influences this, and plus, most importantly, our contribution as leadership in the Global South. Um, University rankings have become influential tools shaping global perceptions of quality, determining research funding, informing policy, and guiding institutional strategy. But despite this influence, traditional ranking systems often rely on closed data sets and narrow indicators that underrepresent the contributions of institutions in the Global South. Many African, Asian, and Latin American universities produce significant research, yet remain disproportionately invisible within global ranking frameworks. And this is why we are having this conversation. It's really important to show what we are doing as stakeholders and leaders in the Global South to help influence this change. So in order to address this imbalance, we from the Training Center in Communication, based out of the University of Nairobi in Kenya, and IES Research, which is based in Singapore, but is part of the iGroup Asia Pacific Limited, with the headquarters in Hong Kong, are convening. We've convened this webinar where we are reframing university rankings and how visibility and open science, how we are influencing visibility and open science through Global South leadership. Now, we are focusing on how open science aligns with practices, including openness, transparency, the persistent identifiers we are using. Because yes, in the Global South, we have institutions producing persistent identifiers, and we are going to share with you the use cases and open infrastructures that can strategically boost institutional visibility and strengthen ranking indicators. This session is grounded in the premise that although universities in the Global South contribute significantly to global research, they are not proportionately recognized in traditional rankings. And we will demonstrate how open science can meaningfully improve visibility, reputation, and overall performance. So this webinar builds on ongoing collaborations that we've had and with discussions we've had primarily with IES Research, and also conversations we've had with Leiden University, CWTS at Leiden University, the Computer Network Information Center based at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. They are producing also a persistent identifier, Claxo and Dora. And also showcasing Africa's persistent identifier, DocID, through the Africa PID Alliance project. So together, all these partners, we will explore how, with all these partners, we will explore how open ecosystems and equitable data infrastructure can reshape global research assessment. So the way we've structured this webinar is that we're going to share with you the lay of the land, and you're going to see the current trends on open science in the Global South. Then you'll also see the infrastructural developments, especially when it comes to persistent identifiers in the Global South. Then we're going to talk about research assessment and why there's a need for global diversity and inclusivity when it comes to open science, particularly in the Global South. And what does that mean for us who are in the Global South? So at the end of the day, we aim to demonstrate how open science practices directly influence university visibility and ranking performance, highlight ranking systems and platforms that prioritize openness, transparency, and inclusivity. And we have that from one of our speakers. Present comparative data insights on open access from the Global South, showcase practical communication methods that enhance research visibility and impact, strengthen collaboration among ranking bodies to see what can we do better, and open infrastructural organizations, policymakers and organizations, and most importantly, encourage cross-regional partnerships. Now, as we get into this webinar, we are looking forward to your views. Feel free to share with us your comments, your experiences, because we were very intentional about hosting this webinar by strictly bringing in Global South partners. And we always say it's really time that the Global South became more vocal in some of these conversations, to the point that we are seen as contributors to the greater conversation when it comes to open science, just not recipients, whether it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to advocacy, but because at the end of the day, this is our visibility matters, and we have to do the hard work of making that accessible and making it also visible, and also with all that we are doing, influence change when it comes to rankings, influenced, and also move from the theory on open science to the practical application on open science as well. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, that is Mr. Wayfair Wong. He is the General Manager of IES Research Consulting, and he is based out of Singapore, and he's going to give us an overview of what IES Research is doing under the umbrella of iGroup Asia Pacific, based out of Hong Kong, and how they're trying to do what they're trying to do to help and no to aid the visibility of research of universities and research institutes in Asia. Over to you, Wei Fong.
Thank you very much, Nico. And let me start sharing screen now. First of all, thank you for having me here today. My name is Wei Fu Wong, and it is a great opportunity to partner with TCC Africa, especially with Nico. Personally, we have a lot of common sharing about the visibility, the ranking, the performance, particularly coming from university and academic in the global South world. And this is something that it become important because from my background, I actually used to work in Web of Science, especially when I graduated from the University of Manchester. I did my PhD in material science, and we worked in Web of Science for years and realized that there's so much of pursuit of performance based on citation. And we're still today living in the world of publish or perish. And there's a lot of lack of understanding about what is scholarly communication. And I myself, together with a few of my dynamic experience consulting firm team, to try to work out what is called research outreach to some key customer in our region. And I thought I could share this in today's webinar. So let me go through a few slides for this opening, because ranking, as mentioned Nico earlier on, is very important. It drives funding, it set the policy, and also it become a some kind of reputation for university. But the question now is that when you think about ranking, shaping the world, but which world we are talking about? It is like we are talking about sport. We know that Olympic is a great sport and everybody would like to see a gold medal from there. But then as you see over the years, sport can get very diverse because we all come from different race, we have different body build, and we all not necessarily good in soccer, baseball, and basketball. So when you think of a performance of sport, there are a big variety of it. And you think about the ranking, it is not based on that few particular criteria. I actually have the honor working with Time Higher Education in the past with my job in Web of Science, and we ever run a ranking workshop in Bangkok. Interestingly, one audience asked a question. He said that if every university follow the criteria from any of these rankers, does it mean that we are making or shaping our university all look the same? That is quite a thought-provoking question. We don't want every university look the same. And we want every university to showcase their unique performance, their unique area of value to the world and not invisible. And today we know that Global South is one of the big regions that are underrepresented. And we need to think about a better way to make our university, our researchers to be more visible in the global platform. And one of the things about visibility gap is not really just about quality gap, because science, I think we all know that we have gone through a very stringent peer review process. And of course, we do expect, researchers to be highly credible. Now, sad to say, we know some cases, things happen, plagiarism and so on and so forth. But even that, it's not only happened in developing country or developing region. It happened pretty much everywhere. I mean, we even see that top university have paper being retracted, Nobel laureate involved in data falsification, and so on and so forth. So it's a completely different issue. And we know that a lot of university in other regions, particularly like South region, the research itself is world-class. It just is not known, see? And if you look at our today's metric, particularly like using citation, whether it's coming from Web of Science or Scopus, they are very close data set, and the indicator are very narrow. We're pretty much looking at citation, though we are talking about impact factors, we are talking about H index, they are pretty much coming from the same spot. I remember during my day of working with Web of Science, and some of you probably very familiar, there are a few editions. There are Science and Technology edition, and there are Social Science and Art Humanity edition. We know that science and technology are very global. If you're thinking about sport, you must be good in athletics, because every sport you need athletics, running, sprinting, and so on. But then there are certain part of the sport are very unique to certain country, and it happened with Web of Science. When you think about art and humanity edition, it is not very popular in Asia, because most of the Asian universities realize that most of the art and humanity are coming from the Western world. And from my experience of particularly consulting and selling Web of Science database, most of my customers, they don't really want to use art and humanity edition for Web of Science, but they can see that the value of science and technology. And that is, in fact, it showcased that there's a lot of effort in sciences, particularly art and humanity, social science, even from Asia. We need to put in a lot of effort to raise up our visibility. And the same thing coming from countries like Africa, Latin America, and so on. I particularly work very closely with my university customer in Indonesia, and they realized that they always been overshadowed by their collaborator from the West, especially like Australia or even Europe and so on. In fact, later on, my colleague, Dr. Chan, is going to show you a press release that showcased that, in fact, the collaborating university working with Indonesian, they are a lot more prominent because they are very good in improving their visibility. Now, open science definitely is a way to go. Now, when thinking about open science, we are not just talking about open access. We are talking about open data, and even more importantly, when things are open, we need to make promotion. We need to reach out to the other part of the world. But of course, there's some infrastructure you need to get your open science right. For example, university strategically we think about how to publish in open access journal, and also trying to develop university publishers, university journals with the capability of having a PID, and also explore different open metrics. Because today we are not just looking at citation. A matter of fact, people start to explore how to quantify impact. And that's definitely not an easy task, because we know that particularly in UK, they spend a lot of effort to quantify impact. And to some extent, that actually involves a lot of writing up and so on. But one thing is definitely for sure, every researcher, you need to promote your work to engage with the society, because just simply publish and stop at that point, your work will not going to have impact. So when we talk about impact, it is not just about citation. It's about making sure the knowledge be able to transfer to the society, to the policymaker, to the industrial, and that you need a completely different metrics. So if you look at what we're talking now, we are talking about not just publishing. We have to do outreaching, then you can see impact. And this is where I think it's quite a gist of open science, because science, when become accessible, you still have to promote it. I mean, it's just like movie. Today you had free movie accessible, legally or illegally, of course. But then if you don't promote it, you would not get people attention. So we are in the world of so much information, and you have to think about how to make yourself outstanding, either coming from an institution, department, or the individual researcher. Now, I want to share a couple of case study here to kind of strengthen my message here. Is that one of the article came out with Nature back on 2017. It actually mentioned that even when you publish your work in the Q1, Q2 journal, there are no people cite your work after 5 years and even longer. Because many researchers feel that good research will speak for itself. True or may not be true, depends who you are. If you're Nobel laureate, definitely people would like to look at your work. But if you're not, and many of us are not, then you have to think about make yourself outstanding. And some people think social media is influencer, not for scientists. That's not true. There are a lot of researchers actually make good use of social media. And many other reasons is more telling researchers to think differently, because you need to know how to promote your science, because if you are not making your work visible, citation wouldn't come. And the other one is look at press release. I actually interact with a lot of researchers. They feel that press release is not necessary. They say, why I need to make the news? But again, a lot of experts, so-called experts, they're known by the media, and they even become the advisor. This is the data that I collected from Urate Alert. It's a subsidiary of AAAS, which they have a journal called Science, which is almost equivalent like Nature, one of the top publishers in the world. And Urate Alert, they actually a platform for press release. And this data is for the year of 2024. And you can look at which part of the world that promotes their science most actively. You can see US dominate, you can UK and China growing very fast, Germany, Japan. A matter of fact, I went to University of Waseda. They told me that they publish about 100 press releases a year from their research work. That is significant. But more importantly, you look at Singapore. In Singapore, we only have 6 universities. But the press release, the number is outstanding, 1%. 1% coming from 6 universities, that is a lot. Because I don't see that coming from Indonesia, Malaysia, and many, many other countries that have a lot of university, even India. And this is what telling us that visibility is become very important. And you know that in the ranking like THE or QS, they do talk about research reputation. Now, this is where I think today's section is encouraging us to help to leverage on the open science concept and to improve the visibility of our individual university and researchers. And I'm excited to listen more later on coming from different speakers sharing their knowledge and experiences. So look forward to this exciting webinar, and thanks again to TCC Africa giving me such an opportunity to share and to talk more about it, and really welcome more questions later on to hopefully we can learn from each other. Thank you very much, and back to you, Nicole.
Well, so it's Joy, but thank you so much.
Oh, Joy, sorry.
It's all right.
Get the name wrong.
No worries, no worries. So great. Thanks for giving us an overview and why it is important to also look at science communication as one of the ways in increasing our visibility. We need to be a bit more proactive. There are several ways in which we can make ourselves much more visible. We can help in influencing change. especially when it comes to our work, our work in universities. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Nies Jan van Eck. He is he's a senior researcher and the head of data science at CWTS, the Center for Science and Technology Studies at Leiden University. Leiden University is known for its proactive and positive outlook when it comes to rankings, particularly when it comes to adopting open access and making us question the traditional norms on ranking. As we first said, yes, we cannot. I always say that we need to be a bit responsible about when we talk about some of these trends in higher education. We cannot say we are going to do away with rankings. What we can do is influence rankings and make sure there is better representation. And there are more diverse ways on putting in, there are more diverse metrics that you can use to measure the performance of an institution. And Leiden Rankings is one of those ranking institutions. Leiden University has produced the Leiden Rankings, which has adopted open access, open science, and various um, uh, methods that would make it easy to include various institutions that are not necessarily from the traditional scale that we normally see. So Dr. Nies is going to share with us how we are rethinking university rankings through open science, and of course, with a case study of what Leiden Rankings has been doing. Okay, over to you, Nies.
Yes, thanks a lot, Joy. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please continue.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot for this nice introduction. Also for the opportunity to share what we have learned in Leiden at CWTS about university rankings. So in my presentation, I will indeed focus on rethinking university rankings through open science. And I will especially focus on the Leiden ranking that we produce at my research center. So first, I will tell you more about the Leiden ranking itself. Then I will explain that we have nowadays two different editions available, a traditional edition and an open edition. And I will tell you more about the differences. And finally, I will also briefly tell you more about some features that we have added to the latest open edition that are also important for today's discussion, to have a much more richer view of the activities of universities, also especially in the global south. But let's first focus on the Leiden ranking and what it is. It's a university ranking. It offers information on the scientific performance of major universities worldwide, and we exclusively base ourselves on bibliometric indicators. So we don't take survey data, for example, into account. It's very important to mention that it is a multi-dimensional ranking. So we provide indicators for different dimensions. So scientific impact, collaboration, and open access. And we present indicators next to each other. So size-dependent and size-independent indicators. It's very important, in our opinion, that that we don't use a so-called composite indicator. So a single number that is supposed to summarize the overall performance of a university. See, we don't think that such a number exists. A number that answers the question, what is the best university worldwide? As the previous speaker already explained, you can look at the performance and activities of universities from different perspectives. So the different dimensions that I just explained, scientific impact, collaboration, open access. And we present the indicators for those dimensions next to each other, and we don't summarize it in a single number. So that is very an important difference compared to other university rankings that are available. So the light ranking, it's based on 2 decades of experience of CWTS in university level bibliometric and analytics. So we produced the light ranking already for about 15 years, and the methodology that we use is already in development for more than 2 decades. So in the lighter ranking, we follow a quite solid and advanced bibliometric methodology, and that is also valued by the users of the ranking. And this was also one of the outcomes of the iNorms assessment of global university rankings that was performed a few years ago. In this assessment, different university rankings were compared. And the lighter ranking especially stood out on the dimension of rigor. And that is because of its solid and advanced and also transparent methodology that we follow. But we were not happy yet. And this was, also related to the 10 rules for university rankings that we drafted about 10 years ago. So 10 rules, 10 principles for the responsible design, interpretation, and use of university rankings. And there we have rule number 4, be transparent. And this rule states that rankings need to explain the methodology. Well, I believe that we do a quite good job over there. So we document our methodology on the website. We have also published papers in the scientific literature in which we explain and also test our methodology. But then the rule continues. Rankings should also make their underlying data available. Users could then see, for example, not only how many highly cited publications a university has produced, but also what they are. And over here, we had for a long time, I believe, a problem. So the lighter ranking is based on a Web of Science data, or was based on traditionally based on Web of Science data, so a proprietary data source. And we are restricted to a license, how to use the data. And this license forbids us to share the underlying data, so the data underlying the rankings. So we are allowed to report all the indicator values, the statistics at the aggregated level of universities, but we are not able to show what is behind the numbers. So the publications that are responsible for a high value or a low value. And this is, in our opinion, really a big problem, because it's nice that we can look at the outcomes, the values of the indicators, but if we really want to learn from those indicator values, then we should also be able to look at the publications that are responsible for those values. So to look at the data behind the numbers. And this was not possible by using and still relying on the Web of Science database. And that was, the starting point of our work to work on an open edition. So in addition to the traditional edition based on Web of Science, we started to work on an open edition about 3-4 years ago. So we have rebuilt the lighter ranking, making it fully transparent by working exclusively with open data and open source algorithms. So the traditional edition is always based on Web of Science data, and 4 years ago we started to explore what was possible using open data. And this led to the lighter ranking open edition. And this edition uses data from OpenAlex, a fully open data source created by our research, nowadays called OpenAlex as well. So we have now the 2 editions available, the traditional edition, the open edition. And let's have a closer look to the open edition, how it looks like in the web interface. So this is the web interface. And we can see that we indeed have those different dimensions available that we can focus on. So the scientific impact, collaboration, and open access dimensions. And for each dimensions, we present different indicators. Another important element is that we always present a size-dependent and a size-independent indicator next to each other, and that we can rank universities based on those different indicators. So here we have, for example, the P top 10%, so the absolute number of highly cited publications, and we can rank universities based on this indicator, but we can also look at the relative perspective, so the percentage of highly cited publications of a university. And then also smaller universities that perform relatively well on this indicator can also be higher in the ranking. And that is also giving some additional interesting perspectives, of course, a much more richer overview of the performance of a university. In addition to the list view, we also have two other views available, the chart view and the map view. And for each university, we have a detailed page available with tables and figures with lots of detailed indicator values. And well, this can also be used to get a very rich overview of well, the performance of universities on the different dimensions. So not only citation impact, but also with respect to collaboration and open access publishing, for example. We also would like to be transparent as possible. So for each university, we also make visible, for example, which component organizations have been taken into account. So for which component organizations, we also collect the publications. And very important, and then I'm coming back to the point that I started with, each indicator value in the Leider Ranking Open Edition is clickable. So here we see, for example, that this particular university has published 29 highly cited publications. And in the open edition, we can really click on the number to see those highly cited publications. And then, we can really have a better overview which type of publications contributed to this list of highly cited publications. So we can have form an idea about the fields of science that contributed most, things like that. And this is something that is not possible in the traditional edition based on Web of Science data. This is only possible, this particular view, in the open edition. We also make lots of resources available for the open edition. So first of all, we share all the results in a reusable data set on Zenodo under a CC0 license. We also share the complete underlying data set and the database that we have used to calculate all the bibliometric indicator values. The dataset is also reusable. We also make it available in Google BigQuery so that you can immediately query the data. And we also make interactive dashboards available that allow users to also compare the results in the traditional edition with the open edition. So here we see some of those dashboards. I will skip this for the moment because of time. So finally, let's have a closer look at the latest version of the Leider Ranking Open Edition, so the 2025 release. In this release, we have added some new elements, some new features that are also important for today's discussion. So the traditional focus of the Leider Ranking is on publications published in international scientific journals. We call them the so-called core publications. But to offer a more inclusive view on the academic system worldwide, the 2025 release of the Leider Ranking Open Edition also considers publications in scientific venues with a national and regional focus. So the so-called non-core publications. And this is really an important step in our opinion, to also cover and make visible in a better way the activities, also especially for universities located in the Global South. These types of universities typically also publish a relatively high share in the local journals, the national journals, and to make these types of activities more visible. This new feature is really of importance. So the inclusion of non-core publications in the analysis, and we have also increased the number of universities worldwide. So we have now almost 3,000 universities that we cover. So we have added also lots of universities from the Global South in the latest version of the Open Edition. So here we see an example of a university from Brazil, and also the effect of this new feature, that we have the view available to also include non-core publications. So we see that for this university, the share of non-core publications is relatively large, and lots of those publications are in the local Portuguese language, for example. And now we can also make indicator values available for these types of publications. So to conclude, what we have learned is that open data sources democratize access to research information, and provide the transparency that is needed for responsible decision making. CWTS launched the Leiden Ranking Open Edition in 2024, offering a fully transparent alternative based on open data from OpenAlex. And the 2025 release of the Leiden Ranking Open Edition takes this further by including so-called non-core publications and expanding coverage to more than 2,800 universities worldwide. And by combining open data with cutting-edge methods, the Leiden Ranking Open Edition offers a more transparent, inclusive, and richer view of academic performance across the globe. And this ends my presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Nice. That was a very insightful presentation. And from what you can see, everybody, that there's the inclusion of more universities from the Global South. The metrics that have been used are more adaptive. That would be very helpful, not only for universities in the Global North, but also in the Global South. So this is what we're talking about. How can we, from our side of the world, help influence this conversation such that we can also be, I always say this, we are responsible for our visibility. And then what we can do for that is to help influence the existing systems so that we have that we are made, our work is made accessible and our work is made visible. So thank you so much, Nice. And this is quite insightful on what you're doing as Leiden Rankings, within the Leiden Rankings, and what you're doing to make it as diverse as possible in order to make it adaptable to institutions also from the Global South, so that we end up having a much more holistic picture on the performance of universities as well. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Hanwen Chang. She's a data analyst at IES Research, and she will be taking us through her talk on From Metrics to Meaning, and rethinking university visibility and impact beyond the league tables. Over to you, Hanwen.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you everyone for joining these sessions. My name is Han Wen and I'm from Taiwan. So today I'm presenting about the topic regarding the rethinking the university visibilities. Okay, so let me see. Okay, right. So I think before we talk about rethinking, so maybe it's good to start from the matrix. Means like many university ranking would use the matrix to measure the performance of universities. So interestingly, I can see that from the African perspectives, among the I think 54 countries in Africa, there's about like 20% of the countries have the ranks, at least one university ranked in QS or THE. So there only like 12 university is like a share of like a less than 1% of the university in Africa has been ranked in QS and THE in top 1,000. So what does that mean? It means that the university in Africa regarding the QS and the TH ranking is highly concentrated in a few countries. So some of you might think that how come? I mean, is it possible because the Africa, the region is like emerging? Maybe we should like improve like increase the number of publications. That's kind of like strategies. But actually, if you look at some data in the right-hand side, I use the Nature Index. You can see like some countries do have make a good progress in terms of research output. Means they improve their research output, the numbers or the qualities. So some of the countries like Morocco or Malawi or the Zimbabwe, they have the good progress, but still they are not ranked in QS and THE yet. So why it's happened? I mean, if you look at the criteria, particularly regarding the THE and QS ranking, those two rankings are the comprehensive ranking, means that they use the global survey to do the evaluations. You can see like even though they are the comprehensive ranking systems, there are more than 50% of the ranking criteria will still account for the so-called visibility related indicators. So it means like visibility is a main driver to the performance of those two rankings systems. Obviously, if your research is visible, of course you would have the more likely to have a good reputation in your subject field. And because your work is visible, you are more likely to be used, be read, or be cited. And if your work is visible, of course, that you might attract like some global partners to collaborate with you. So those indicators can be directly or indirectly related to the visibilities. So you can see like improving the visibility of the university is very important. It affects the ranking performance in those ranking systems. So what we should do or how we can kind of like improve that? I can share the one case that is about the press release. I think you guys already heard about the press release from Weifu's presentations. These are two samples that I think is very interesting. If you look at just press release titles, the left-hand side is about the fish in the Nile River. And the second one is about the COVID-19, like the situations in Nigeria. So if you look at the titles, you can see that, okay, this is something like a research from Africa because they have like a local experiences or local interest. However, if you look at the one who distribute this press release, you can see like they are not from Africa. They are from Tokyo, from Japan, and from another universities in United States. So you can see like those kind of like collaboration study. I mean, you can see like some name from Africa University was shown in the content, but you need to read through all the press release and you can see the name here. And you can see that even though there's like a collaboration work, the credit or the visibility will go to the one that released the press release. So even though you work very hard in research, you still need to do something to improve your visibility, and this is the case that you should be aware of. So then your leadership in research and your local impact will not be ignored in the wider audience. So how we can improve, or how we usually, as IES research team, we work with our customers to improve their visibilities. So there are some key elements you should be aware of. The first one, you need to curate your research into a story. It's important to have the story, or to show that your university have some specialties or some strengths. I mean, people cannot just read the number of the publications, or just like the papers, for joys, right? So you need a story. You need the narrative, the information for the audience. And once you have the story, you need to distribute it. You need to let people know about the stories. And in this status, you need the multiple channels. Our team, they work with the multiple channels around the world. They're all about the scholarly communications. Even though you see some like a social media platform here, we actually target research communities in the field that the university focus on. So as you might remember, what we've mentioned, that researchers, they do use social media as a platform to share or to follow their colleagues. So and because why we needed the multiple platform, because no platform can fix all the purpose. So, for example, in China, if you want to target on China, you cannot use the Facebook or Twitters. You need to use some local platform like WeChat, Weibo. So those are the strategy that university need to keep that in mind when they promote their work. So we work with the university in Macau. The name is Macau University of Science and Technology. I remember we started work with this university like 1 or 2 years ago, and when we met them, we can feel that they are very enthusiastic about the ranking. They want to do something to improve their ranking for obvious purpose. But we can see that they are not just like cross their finger to just make a wish. They did take some actions. So, for example, they increased their research output a lot over the past 5 years, and more importantly, they work on some project that they can improve their visibilities. They are a very new, young university, but they know they cannot lose their, the opportunities during this, the development stage. So what they do, as I mentioned, we help them to kind of like curate. Actually, before the curations, because although they are a science and technology university, they have a lot of talents in this university. They're not just focused on the traditional science and technology field. They also have the specialties like in business department, and also the tourism, because Macau is a tourism place, right? So they have the strengths there. They also have the people like working in science in space science, like the moon or the planet. So we work with them and to help them to identify using the analytics or bibliometrics methods to identify some key topics they can promote. And then after they confirmed, we will curate those story into like a multiple clusters as a story. And then we promote those stories in social medias. So then we can have the data or the traffic from the social media. Then after like 1 year, we got the information about how they can refine the strategy. So here is an example. We have the outreach footprint. We have the visibility data. We have the citation data. So we can identify what kind of the story or research is high visibility and high citations, or it's high visibility, low citation, or it's low visibility, high citation, or perform low in visibility and outreach. So that make us think that not all even though before we do the project, the university might think, okay, it's simple. We just promote it. We will get the citation. We will get the visibility. But the reality is not that way. Actually, every the kind of a research might have a different pattern for that. Some will go to the high visibility and citation, but some may not. It doesn't mean that those are not good research. It's to bring us some insights about how we can improve them and how can improve the strategy to promote them. So this is a key point that we can get from this kind of outreach project. So I think the key takeaway from the experiences that we have, there's a 3 point. The first one is ranking is about the metrics. You can see a lot of like the scores or numbers, but when you want to show your performance, you need the stories. You need to tell the story about your research. And with that story, you can increase your visibility of your profile, and you can turn your local excellence to the global influences. And your story need to be heard. So you need to be known. So there's a pattern from the metrics to the global impact. Yes, we do need the data. We do need the analytics to tell us something, but we need to convert them into the story, the meaningful story, and go to the impact. So this is the pattern or the way, the pathway that I will highly recommend our university to take a look and to embed it to your strategy when you want to be the excellent. Yeah, thank you. Okay, over back to you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Hanwen. And this has been very helpful in giving us an insight, not only at looking at citation impact, but mostly also looking at research visibility as well in improving that what can help in influencing the, the visibility of your university. So we pretty much need to look beyond just publication. We need to go and also look at the science communication bit. And thanks for sharing the various use cases and insights. And I was seeing some of the comments from the group where participants were saying that unfortunately not many African institutions are active when it comes to, though it's changing, don't get me wrong, it's changing, but we could do better in taking advantage of science communication and using that to increase the visibility of our work. And as I said, I'm not saying that we're not doing it, we could do better. There are quite a number of initiatives happening on the continent, but I think there's a need for a proper paradigm shift for this to happen so that we can see also representation from African institutions. And it's not that you don't see that, you will see it, but it's normally select institutions, and there's more than that. There's more than that in the region that can be presented. Now, the next speaker will be Mr. Zhang Tianming he is the president of the Society of China University Journals, and he's going to talk about how open science and university evaluation, he's going to talk about open science and university evaluation system in China. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Joy. And also thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to briefly introduce the open science and university evaluation system in China. Well, as you can see, many columns here, but let's follow the instructions. The current status of open science in China from the policy level, the governmental policy is not very clear now in China, but the institutional level, we have formulated, relevant policies in different situations. Here, I just give some examples of the institutions. And from the infrastructure level, we have established several points of, infrastructure, such as the repositories, open platforms, OA publishing platforms, and prepoints platforms. We also have many, guidelines for the researchers to publish open access papers, and we also have the recommended open access journalist and the early warning journalist, and we have, CSTR or breed as the identifier of researcher or the institutions. And from the open access publishing level, you can see that China has take the #1 open access paper in the world, especially in the gold open access papers. And for the Chinese journals, only less than 40% of them are involved in the open access. But most of them are now very not very standard. They are all bronze open access model. From the open data level, the Chinese government has established some infrastructure for the open data, such as the data bank and many scientific data centers. And we have also have the regulations on the data management. So that's the current status of open science in China. And we can see that by the end of 2025, the Chinese government just released their new action plan for international cooperation in open science. This action plan is collaborated with African Union, Brazil, and South Africa in response to the G20's meeting that Chinese leaders announced the cooperation with those partners. We have 6 objectives in different aspects to strengthen the open science. And I think the plan will still welcome more partners to join in. The problem is that we have the objectives. How can we make it into practice? I think the Chinese government are making their plan to put it into the practice. We hope more collaborations with the African Union, Brazil, and South Africa countries and universities maybe. From the academic publishing policy level, we can see that open science also has been much more emphasized by the Chinese authorities, and with the promoting of open science, along with that, the research evaluation system are also, promoting. So we emphasize more representative works for the researchers, and we have much more efforts on the governance of research integrity. So from this level, I think the Chinese researchers and the researchers, especially in universities, they are much more influenced by the evaluation system, both from the governmental level and from the university level. So these policies, I think, will have strong, influence on their research activities, on their publishing activities. This is the university evaluation system in China. We can see, also 4 columns. The left 2 are from the official side. Now the Chinese universities, we have double first class product. The double first class is the first class university and the first class disciplines. So this is the governmental level, and another government official evaluation system is the authoritative discipline ranking, which was evaluated by the Ministry of Education to have a ranking in disciplines among universities. So these 2 are from the official level, and we also have the evaluation system from the International Research Metrics Academic Influence. We just counted the ESI disciplines, and we counted the high impact published papers in the in highly reputation journals. So this the international influence ranking, and the last one is from the commercial rankings. I think most of the rankings are mentioned just a moment ago by our speakers. And in China, we also have Shanghai rankings, but these kind of rankings, many Chinese universities, they have different opinions, they have different points of view. So we can see some individual universities in China, they announced that they do not want to, indexed by this kind of rankings. So that's the current evaluation system, university evaluation system in China. But what we can see is that the open science has not been considered as an important index in university rankings in China. That's the truth now, and we hope in the future that open science can be much more involved into the general university ranking. The last several points of view from my personal points. The first one is that so far the international geopolitical conflicts have very big effects on the research, on the collaboration, on the academic management and open science. So we have to think more and collaborate more to overcome this kind of conflicts. And the second, the universities, we need to improve cognition on open science and continually to promote education and incentive mechanism, especially for the researchers, for teachers in universities. And the third one, the university ranking should be closely linked to universities' open science practices and their contributions to the open science. So I think in China, more and more universities will involved into the open science practice. And the fourth one is that we need to strongly promote international collaboration, both among universities and among the research institutions, among researchers. So that's what we can do to collaborate together. And the last one, universities should take more responsibility in reforming our visibility, open science, and the global source leadership. Also, we must, contribute more to global academic governance. That's our duty. Yeah, that's all my introduction. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang, and thanks for giving us an overview of how China is, the Chinese journals are moving towards the open access options and the different types of open access, and also how that is actually influencing the university performance and visibility as well. Now, we've talked about the lay of the land, understanding what is going on, the trends in Asia. Some of them we've got some from Africa as well, but also what the rankings, the rankings are trying to do to influence change, like in the case of Leiden rankings. Our next session is going to focus on infrastructure and how PIDs can improve open science and aid in rankings. Again, as I said when we began this session, would like to use case studies from the global south. So our first case study is from China and our second one is from Africa. So the one from China is, we'll have Miss Li Juan Wang. She's the product manager for the CSTR platform, which is a persistent identifier, heavily used not only in China, but also in Asia as well. And she comes from the Computer Network Information Center from the Chinese Academy of Sciences. She'll be talking about integrating persistent identifiers in research activities and the services and applications of the Science Technology Resource Identification, that is the CSTR. Over to you, Li Juan.
Okay, thank you, Joy. Now let me share my screen. We are talking. Awesome.
Yes.
Take
There you go.
Okay, now can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Joy, for introduction.
Put it on, Li Juan, please put it on full screen. Yes, thank you. And continue.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Li Juan from Computer Network Information Center, Chinese Academy of Sciences. Today, I will introduce how persistent identifiers was integrated into research activities with a focus on the service and application of science and technology resources identification, CITR. Okay, now let's begin. Okay, let's start with a question. Why do so many valuable research contributions remain hidden in current ranking systems? I see three possible barriers. Complex structures like labs and hospitals make clear attribution difficult. Non-journal outputs like datasets and reports are overlooked. Broken attribution chains work done in national labs, hospitals don't always benefit the university's profile. That means invisible contribution cannot be assessed or organized. So that is why the precision identifier solution we call PIDs were so critical, because the PIDs can create a unique identity for every entity, make rich metadata for context, connect relationships, not isolated counts. So PIDs make research visible, measurable, and traceable. The UNESCO recommendation on Open Science 23rd November 2021, it mentioned that the precision identifier is taken as the essential part of the open science infrastructures, as well as one of the investing in open science infrastructures and services. This is our identifier CSTR, standing for Common Science and Technology Results. It is one of the identifier. It is based on China National Standard in 2016. And here is an example of CSTR. You can see 31253 is the registration institution code. 11 is the scientific data code, and the rest is the internal code. This is an example of the CITR. And now this is the resource type supported by CITR. For example, 02 is the large infrastructure, and 11 is scientific data. Of course, papers, patents, standards have their own resource type code. This is also featured in CITR. CITR's core brief are free to have, easy to use, digital and physical. This means we provide free prefix allocation, user-friendly precision services, and can track research impacts across both physical and digital spaces. Based on the work of this foundation, the CITR identification platform was completed in 2018. CITR platform provides our members basic services, including registration, resolution, and associated services and other data services. And now CITR platform has allocated 23 million CITRs across 11 types for 439 members. And our members have data center, journals, and dissertation institutions and other organizations. And the fields, including astronomy, geography, and other important fields. And there are lots of publications that are using CITR. And CITR supported 20 national data centers in China and 32 data centers in CAS. And now CITR services are integrated to 10 mainstream academic publishing systems in China, allowing journals can very easily to get their CITRs for their published articles. And now I will introduce some use cases. The first use case is application in universities. In China, many universities run their own journal system and data platforms. For example, Tsinghua University, Peking University, and Shanghai Jiaotong University, they use CITR to identify their data. The second use case is application in hospitals. Here is the data platform of Beijing Friendship Hospital, Capital Medical University. After this hospital's data platform using CITR, its research and outputs can be clearly shared to the universities. That means the hospital's achievements can be linked back to the university. The third application of CITR is in large infrastructure. Using CITR to acknowledge research infrastructures allows outcomes to be accurately traced back to the exact facility and even the specific instruments. And because CITR can create link between the infrastructure platform and publications platform, when a researcher reading a paper online, you can easily click and directly to the official introduction page of the facility. So this is the first use case. That's the application of CITR in biodiversity. Species, plants, and specimens can be linked via CITR. And this is the QR code on a plant at the South China Botanical Garden. The content of this QR code is a precise CITR resolution link. And by scanning this QR code, you can access the digital profile of this species. Based on the success in China, we have applied the CITR to the species in Tashkent Botanical Garden in Uzbekistan. And now we are discussing the solution of the QR code of the plant. With the growing collaboration with them, now CITR team was working with Science and Innovation Agency of Uzbekistan to establish the CITR Central Asian Node to provide the technology to support the development of the countries in the Belt and Road Initiative. And we partnered with TCC Africa 2024. We have a conference in Beijing together, and our cooperation aims to promote the interconnection of scientific resources between China and Africa and to facilitate the exchange and cooperation on data identification services between the two regions. And now the docket system, the identifier system of Africa PID Alliance has integrated with CITR, and now you can get CITR from docket. That's the key step enabling even deeper collaboration ahead. In other international cooperation, CITR collaborates with HSAS Hospital in Malaysia to provide identification services for the newsletter. And other international corporations, CITR is recognized and collaborates with INA, Datasets, EPEC, identifier.org, NameDuty, and GOSC, and other international bodies. CITR contributing actively to the global identifier landscape. And CITR team were leading and hosting of the international forum about PIDs, like the events like RDA, IDW, and PID Fest. And finally, now it brings the new challenge on how to contribute a greater potential to science society as PID provider to help scientists to go over the gap between PIDs to build a deep cooperation for AI. Ultimately, to let more researchers know the benefits and PIDs will provide in the future. So by building open interconnected PID infrastructure like CITR, we enable every institution to make their full research contributions visible, measurable, and rightfully acknowledged. Okay, that's all of my presentation. And here's the CITR's email and website, and welcome to contact us. Thank you for listening. Okay, Joy.
Thank you so much, Lijuan.
Thank you, Joy.
You're welcome. As I've told you, colleagues, that the Global South is also actively getting involved in the production of PIDs, which are aiding in, and they're leveraging on open science, and which is leveraging on increasing the visibility of research coming out of the region. I'd like to introduce the co-project lead of the Africa PID Alliance, and that is Mr. Nabil Ksibi. He's going to take you through how DocID, that is the PID that Lijuan has just talked about, and what DocID is doing. It's still in the preliminary stages. It's still in production stages, and what we are doing and how it is aiding in influencing open science. Over to you, Nabil.
Thank you very much, Joy, and thank you, TCC Africa, for organizing this extraordinary event, actually. It's very rare, well, at least on the webinar side, that we can see collaboration from everywhere in the world, from Latin America, from Asia, from Africa. And what's really interesting in this webinar is that we are all somehow aligned on rethinking, this classical model of ranking universities and, labeling universities according to some, I would say, KPI and metrics that were invented, decades ago. So my name is Nabil Ksibi. I'm the Africa PID Alliance co-project lead, and I'm also the founder of Nexus Synergy. I've worked with ORCID for a decade. I've worked in the open research and open science infrastructure field for years. And I think one of the most interesting things that we did with Joy is that we were thinking of how we can make Africa more visible, not only in terms of research output, but also in terms of valuing or making in value or putting in value our cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge wealth, let's say, and transforming all that knowledge and all that history and culture into a digital wealth and make it visible to the world. So briefly, today I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna present a theoretical part on how we are thinking of this ranking system and how can we reframe that or rethink that. And then I'm gonna quickly show you what is DocID and what is the digital object container identifier that it is now live, and there are a lot of universities and a lot of institutions and organizations in Africa and outside Africa that are interested in really working with that and making a contribution and being part of that system. So without further ado, because the first question is, do university rankings matter, right? Why aren't we re-questioning that? That's the maybe the topic that we can rise now with the rise of AI, with the new modern era that we are living in. For the simple reason is that the university rankings, the classic ones, are here, and we're here for decades just to shape reputation, make some funding or like some visibility for universities to obtain funding, and then they were influencing also policy decisions. Influencing institutional strategy and collaboration. That's also one of the things that university rankings were good at. Also, often misrepresenting Global South research contributions. Without further, like the next slide would be the global visibility gap. Sorry, background noise, but yeah. So the heavy reliance on closed and proprietary data sources, as a lot of other speakers mentioned, there were talk about Scopus as, Scopus and dimensions and citations databases that were having data closed and not really, open for to use to basically build up metrics and build up analysis around metrics. And then there is the underrepresentation of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. So that's one thing that is not really mentioned here. And sorry, just a second, I'm gonna close the window. I'm very sorry. We are talking about metadata fragmentation and discoverability limits, and that's also something that we need to mention when we are speaking about visibility gap. Then we're thinking through open science and social impact. So speakers before me talked about social media and the importance of social media and the visibility of research and research output in those platforms and channels. So that's very important as well to mention, because in our era, these are the one of the means as well and channels to consider when promoting research and promoting research visibility. There is some moment where Twitter, before X, were really considered as a nice platform to promote research and to promote research output. But then with some, I think politics around that, around the presence of Twitter and, the change to X, it's somehow lost a little bit of that, let's say, advocacy. We are still, looking at the channel to do that, but I think in the future we're gonna find a good social media channel to promote research production, and then probably to help rethinking the ranking system. Then persistent identifiers. So why we are here and why we are thinking that persistent identifiers can really lead this change, because not only UNESCO talked about it in the open science recommendations, but also the experience and the living of some institutions did say that persistent identifiers are the pillars of what we want to build in the future, right? So we have ORCID for identity, we have ROR for institutional visibility, we have GUI and R keys, and PIDs are considered as public digital infrastructure. But then there is another pillar that needs to really federate all these identifiers, right? We are always looking at a mean on how to link those identifiers, whether through citation databases, whether through PID graphs, whether through systems. But there is always some discrepancies where some regions, some other regions are using some graphs to federate metadata around from all those identifiers. But in Africa, what we thought about is really something new, a new technology basically that can help in linking those identifiers together, and that can really build this new global system by integrating different PIDs and different type of PIDs together, right? And for that, I'm just going to quickly go through the Docket platform. So this is what we called our product or our persistent identifier coming from Africa, the digital object container identifier, which is an identifier that is federating all that's where the objective is really to federate all identifiers that you can have in your infrastructure, whether you are coming from China, just like how CSTR explained it. We managed to do the integration with the CSTR DOI and other DOIs, if they were produced in other parts of the world, can be also integrated with the Docket. But the primary objective of Docket were really to bridge technology and tradition in Africa, right? That's where we had our voices were heard basically when we requested to have a persistent identifier from Africa. What was the purpose of that? What was the meaning of that, of having something from Africa, and why do you need that? And our response was really to promote the cultural heritage and to have a persistent identifier for indigenous knowledge and cultural heritage, right? Because now the digital wealth is not only, I think, the scientific output or the research output. There is a lot of knowledge that is coming from cultural heritage and indigenous knowledge that needs to be also considered with this global infrastructure, right? So that's on the definition of the Docket, and you can go really on the platform here. I'm gonna copy for you or Nicole, if possible, to copy the Docket link so that the participants can access to it and start testing and see the platform. But there is also some very nice links here, like the Docket metadata schema, like the submission moderation process, like the privacy and data protection policy, the community statement, the infrastructural framework, and the link to the African Alliance website. But what most important is that the Docket is meant to be very much easily usable. So we really played on the user-friendly part of things, so that you can create and assign a Docket very easy no matter where you are. So we've made the different languages that you can use, from French to Kiswahili, German, and I think we are on the way to add Chinese and a couple of other Asian languages as well. And that's also very easy to, as I said, to assign. So we can just start by the resource type. You select here what we want to select, and then as soon as we enter here our, let's say, our data, we can generate a Docket for it, right? So that's the main purpose. Same thing with publications, same thing with documents. The creators, we've linked that to ORCID, so you can just enter the name and then it's gonna search for the ORCID ID there. For the organizations, we've linked that to ROR, so it's very simple and pretty straightforward to find your institution integrated with ROR there. For funders as well, we are now looking at the funder ID and just to diverse the selection of the funders identifiers, because we now only having ROR as integration. And then the projects, it's linked now with RAID. So if you have your URL with RAID, you can add it here to the docket, and then that's it. You can submit, and then in the background, all the metadata will be linked to Cordra. We used an open source digital object management software, which is built by CNRI. It's meant basically meant to be used for 20.UIs or handles, but we're trying to reinvent, the thinking around that as well, and to integrate 10.UIs in it so that it can accommodate the metadata behind what we are creating in Docket. So that's how we are backing up all the metadata that are collected from Docket, and then that's it. And I mean, after everything here, we just hit on submit, and then we can find our docket here, ready to be shared for collaboration and for to be worked. As you can see here, this is one example that we're on a study containerizing, versions of the docket for different personas, for funders, for research institutions, for organizations. So if you are a university, for example, in China, and you want a version of the docket that is totally in Chinese, and that is integrated with CSTR DOI, we can work on a version for you, and then everything will be centralized in the Docket central platform. So that's how we are thinking of having this PID graph theory, let's say, realized. And that's pretty it, really, regarding the docket. So I'm just gonna quickly go back to the presentation. So the challenges with Docket is that we improve attribution and aggregation of research outputs, high visibility in global databases, and recognition without gaming metrics. So if you see here, well, the funny part is that we generated all these images with AI, with Gemini. So we're thinking, we're giving, let's say, the hand to Gemini to think with us about the future of the university rankings and metrics. And the nice thing that it basically produced is that he mentioned the Global Knowledge Ecosystem Initiative, which we think that Docket might be a big part of as a federator of identifiers in the global south, and then in the future globally. Now, the policy implications: PIDs enable trust, evidence-based evaluation, and it reduces the dependence on opaque ranking systems. It strengthens the national and regional research strategy. And then we encourage that leaders and policy makers to really adopt platforms like Docket, like the CSTR GOIs, and then really rethink how to integrate all those identifiers together. The key takeaways is that visibility is infrastructure, not marketing, and then open science strengthens rankings and trust. The Global South can really lead assessment and reform. And then I encourage you to visit Docket and to give us feedback about that. And then the hint about all this presentation is that all those images were created by Gemini AI, as I said. And thank you so much, TCC Africa, and thank you, Nexus Synergy, for making all of us work together on these projects.
Thank you so much, Nabil. Colleagues, as I said earlier on, the Global South is actively involved in open infrastructure, especially on the data management elements. And with the rise of the creation of persistent identifiers, in no way, we need to be very clear, and I started seeing the questions in the group. In no way are we competing with existing persistent identifiers. It is about making systems that have largely been ignored more fair. In the case of China, the biggest problem has always been language. Okay, and even though you look at Asia, China and Korea and Singapore are maybe Malaysia are maybe the superpowers in that region. But then when you look at greater Southeast Asia, they may not potentially afford existing persistent, the normative persistent identifiers that we are working with that exists like Crossref or DataSite. So the creation of the CSTR, which is heavily used in Southeast Asia, is making systems fair. The fact that they're also integrated within the docket that we've created in Africa, it means that we're also opening up regions even at a metadata level. So, but then also from the African perspective, the way Nabil has said that when you're looking at persistent identifiers, the average institution has so many persistent identifiers, and sometimes we really don't know what works with what. So what we're trying to do is aggregate these persistent identifiers so that they can be used effectively. That is number one. So the rise of open science has led to more questions. The more questions are that what kind of persistent identifiers can we use that can actually support us beyond just the traditional ones that exist? That is what we need to look at. When you look at areas like indigenous knowledge and cultural heritage, it's not an African problem. This is pretty much where anywhere in the world where indigenous knowledge and cultural heritage has always been a priority. And you'll notice that there are no metadata standards for that. And that's why you don't get enough identifiers assigned to indigenous knowledge and cultural heritage. And the result is helicopter science. There's a lot of extractive science. So one of the ways we can do that is assigning identifiers. And this is how DocID is going to help. And the fact that we are including persistent identifiers from other regions in the world, it is enhancing the visibility of the work we are doing. The first thing, I know one of the things you may ask is, okay, with the rise of persistent identifiers, where does the metadata stay? In the case of the CSTR, the metadata stays in China, it stays at home. In the case of DocID, the metadata stays in Africa. So again, you're looking at research and scientific sovereignty. Okay, so for the longest time, our metadata hasn't been staying at home. So we are really influencing that conversation, and we are truly excited because even though we are in the production stage, we are literally now going through the integration stage and use case with universities. So some of the institutions here that we are seeing here are actually represented, and they are use cases, whether it's museums, universities, and also publishers have been interested because of the nature of the work. And as you saw, it is already included. All the other major persistent identifiers are already wrapped within DocID. ROA, ORCID, DataSite, Crossref, RAID. Because another thing we need to understand is that these persistent identifiers cannot work in isolation. Knowing very well that they cannot work in isolation in order to build richer metadata, richer connections, the rise of new generation persistent identifiers are coming up. These new generation identifiers are the type that are consolidating them so that you use the identifiers based on what you need it for. Okay, so it can support workflow systems and the like. So what we're saying is that there are winds of change happening on the continent. And yes, we leveraged on open science for this. So we didn't reinvent the wheel. So technologies that have actually existed. So without further ado, we are going to talk about evaluation and research assessment. We've talked about the trends in research. We've talked about infrastructure, the trends in open science. We've talked about open infrastructure, and we've seen case studies from China, and we've also seen some from Africa. So let's see, we are now going to South America. It's very early in South America. That's why we put them last. It's about 4 or 5 a.m. right now. So we have 2 pre-recordings, and then our final speaker will be from UNESCO, who will be giving us on global diversity on open science. So the first presentation will be from Claxo from South America, and we are talking about research assessment. Research assessment and open science go hand in hand. There is no way we can talk about improving, influencing open science if we don't talk about how can we improve research assessment and how can that influence rankings, how can that influence institutional performance as well. So in this case, we will have Claxo, we'll have Dr. Judith Naidoff. She's the coordinator of the Latin American Forum on Research Assessment, FOLEC Claxo, and the Latin American System for University Evaluation, SILEU-Claxo, and she's based out of Argentina. So Dr. Naidov's presentation will be a recording and then followed by our colleague from UNESCO. So Nicole, please share the recording.
Okay, one moment.
Right. As she's preparing for that, feel free to ask any questions or make any comments. I've seen a comment from Dr. Senzu, who was talking about research evaluation, ranking and evaluation. And this is now where we are coming into this bit, because there is no way you can do it without the other. So now we'll have Dr. Naidov's presentation. Okay.
Hello, my name is Judith Naidorf. I am a principal researcher at CONICET and professor at University of Buenos Aires. I'm currently serve as coordinator of Latin American Forum on Research Assessment, FOLEC, and Latin American System for University Evaluation, SILEU, both within the framework for the Latin American Council of Social Sciences, CLACSO. I would like to begin by warmly thanking TCC Africa and IES Research for the invitation to participate in this webinar and for the opportunity to contribute to this discussion through the pre-recorded video. It is a pleasure to take part of the South-South dialogue on university ranking, open science, and research assessment. In this presentation, I will offer a critical reflection on university rankings. Why it is necessary to question them, what structural problems they generate within our academic system, and how the Bogotá Manifesto provides a normative and political framework to rethink research and university evaluation. Finally, I will share a set of recommendations particularly relevant for Latin American and other global thought context, in dialogue with current debates of open science, visibility, and responsible research assessment. Please move to slide 2. Part 1, critical diagnosis of rankings. Move to slide 3. Why questions university rankings? University rankings are often presented as technical, objective, and neutral tools, intending simply to provide information and facilitate comparison. However, it is essential to recognize that rankings are not innocent instruments. They have direct influence on funding, institutional prestige, university policies, and individual academic careers. In this sense, ranking function and technologies of governance for the university system, they shape decision, induce behaviors, and ultimately define what is understood as quality. The problem is that this definition of quality is built upon external, homogenized, and descontextualized standards, which do not necessarily reflect institutional missions, priorities, and social responsibility. Move to slide 4, please. Level and effects of rankings. These effects do not current as single level, but rather cuts across multiple dimensions of the scientific university system. At the individual level, ranking reinforces productivity's pressures and encouraging strategic practices, and do not always have substantive academic or social value. And at the collective level, competition among institutions is intensified and cooperative dynamics are widened and leading to homogenization of research agendas. At the institutional level, rankings generate a shift in priorities, directing resources and strategies toward it rankable, even when this conflict with university core mission. Well-known phenomena emerge here, such as Matthew effect, Goward law, and performativity of indicator. Move to slide 5, please. Ranking and decontextualization. A central problem of ranking is their structural inability to contextualize. They rely on closed and biased database dominated by central languages, disciplines, and commercial publishers. As a result, key dimensions of university work become invisible, including local and regional knowledge production, books, non-commercial journals, community engagement, and public policy impact. This particularly affects university in the global South, reinforcing center-periphery asymmetries and relationship of academic dependency. Therefore, the problem, it is not only the ranking measured poorly, but rather what is chosen to be measured, what is considered value, and for whom. Please move to slide 6. Now I wanna introduce the part 2 of my presentation, our contribution. The Bogotá Manifesto as an alternative framework. Please move to slide 7. The Bogotá Manifesto is a normative and political framework. In response to the diagnosis, the Bogotá Manifesto offers an alternative framework. It is grounded in the conception of science as a common good and a human right, and it explicitly challenges the commodification of knowledge and the uncritical reliance on metrics and indicators. From this perspective, evaluation cannot be purely technical. It must be socially relevant, situated, and democratic. This is therefore not an insolent critique of rankings, but a challenge to hegemonic model of academic evaluation that currently structure university system worldwide. Please move to slide 8. Manifesto principles that challenge rankings. Several principles of the manifesto directly contradict the logic of university rankings. Among them is the notion of expanded impacts, which goes far beyond citation, the recognition of linguistic and cultural diversity, and the centrality of collective work and knowledge co-production. Also, key is the principal and open participatory and contextualized evaluation, which cannot be reduced to a position in a comparable table. In short, ranking failed to capture what the manifesto defined as truly valuable. Please move to slide 9. Explicit critique. Principle 9 of the manifesto. The manifesto is particularly explicit in the Principle 9, where it calls the moving beyond rankings and commercial metrics. Instead, it proposed system based on qualified expert judgment, qualitative and contextualized indicators, and the strengthening of regional, public, and non-commercial system. It is important to emphasize that this is not about creating an alternative rankings, but about displacing the central role that rankings currently play in academic evaluation and policy decision-making. Please move to slide 11. The last part of my presentation will be the part 3, recommendation and future challenges. Please move to slide 12. Recommendation 1, separating rankings from evaluation. The first recommendation is clear. Rankings and institutional evaluation are not the same. Commercial ranking are external, comparative, and competitive instrument. Institutional evaluation, by contrast, should be an internal, contextualized process and oriented toward improvement and institutional mission, confusing international visibility with institutional quality produce profound distortion on university system. Please move to slide 13. Recommendation 2 and 3. The second recommendation is not to use or promote rankings, not to incorporate them into public policies, not to use them as criteria for evaluation or funding, and avoid reproducing their logic in institutional communication. Please move to slide 14. The third recommendation is to learn how to evaluate differently throughout responsibly situated and participatory assessment practices that recognize diverse academic trajectories and align with the principle of open science and social relevance. Please move to slide 15, strategic challenges and new infrastructure. The challenges for the future, it is not to create, as I said, new rankings, but to create new infrastructures for comparison, public, open, and cooperative infrastructures that enable horizontal, non-hierarchical comparison, combining contextualized, quantitative indicator with situated qualitative dimension. This tool should not serve competition, but rather collective learning, better management, and improvement. Please move to slide 16 to finish. To conclude, moving beyond rankings that not means giving up on evaluation, but rather reclaiming its public democratic, and situated purpose. Thank you very much.
Nicole, the sharing of the screen. But what is very clear from Dr. Nadov is that we are not trying to, when we began this conversation, we made it very clear that we are not saying we do away with rankings. I'm already seeing the conversations in the chat. We're not saying that we do away with the rankings. We are saying we need to influence the existing rankings. I've seen one comment, again, from Dr. Senzu, who is saying these other existing rankings have been very successful. Yes, we are not denying they've been successful. We're not saying you do away with rankings. Rankings have been made part and parcel of the higher education sector to the point that even we discuss it in parliament. I've had it being discussed in the Kenyan parliament. But what we are saying is that we need better ranking systems. We need better criteria, as she was saying. We don't only look at the quantitative, you need to look at the qualitative elements, whereby when you're looking at a ranking institution, it's just not about citation. It's not just about citation. That is the first thing that we are saying. But it's also SDGs. And I'm proud to say that Africa was the first region in the entire, really on the planet, that influenced the rankings to start including SDGs within their, as a metric within their systems. That never existed. So what this conversation really is not about saying that rankings are bad. What we're saying is that we need better assessment. We need to speak out as those of us in the Global South to show what we are contributing so that it can be featured. Do not forget, rankings leads to the amount of funding you're going to get, it will connect to, what do you call it, to the top talent you're targeting, whether it's students or staff, funding. In the case of China, you're looking at a situation that if you are in the top tier, universities, you get more funding than those in the lower tier. What you're talking about is equity. You're not saying no to it. You're saying better systems, and that is what Dr. Nadov is talking about. We're not saying just look at the quantitative element, look at the qualitative elements, look at the contributions per region. And that is why when you look at if you even tear apart the rankings and you break it down by region, you actually see the power and influence these universities have in that region. But if you look at it at the global level, it is not showcased. So the rise of open science is making us question these traditional systems and telling us that we need to do better. We need to accommodate other metrics. And I'm not saying that it is not happening. It has started. As I said, in Africa, we started with the SDGs, with Leiden University. You're seeing there's a lot on open science, and they're choosing not to use Web of Science. As Waifo said, after working with Clarivate Analytics, he noticed that, hey, there's a discrepancy. Okay, you're just seeing one-sided information. So they're choosing, instead of using, because what do you call this? THE and QS, they strictly use closed databases. And I can assure you, those of us from the Global South, there are very few of our institutions that can afford Web of Science or Scopus. They're select few who can afford it. And that means there's already a discrepancy on access to information and that information being shared on our representation. So the fact that you're seeing Leiden University saying that, you know what, we are not going to use those parameters, we are going to use open access citation databases. That's a first. So leveraging on open science, the open science ecosystem so that we can have better representation. And fun fact, I strongly suggest you look at the latest Leiden rankings. You will be surprised at how universities in the Global South have performed. They've literally outperformed the universities in the Global North. Why? Representation. Colleagues, representation matters. So it's not about doing away with it, but let's do it properly. The rise of open science, let's be more representative. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Andre Basil. Dr. Andre Basil is the UNESCO Chair for Diversity and Inclusion in Global Science. And he's going to talk about beyond rankings, how the Global South is reshaping research assessment in open science. And this answers to some of the questions that we were seeing in the chat. Over to you, Dr. Andre Basil.
Thank you very much, Joy. Hope you can all see my presentation. Yes. So I'm Andre Basil. I'm a researcher at WTS. I work here with Neisian, and I co-chair the UNESCO Chair on Diversity and Inclusion in Global Science. So we do a lot of work connected to the better recognition, the better representation of science in the Global South particularly. So I'm originally from Brazil, as you can imagine by my name, and I tend to work strongly with Latin America as a whole. So to talk a little bit about this idea of going beyond rankings. So we know that rankings are somehow part of this classical perspective of centrometrics, that you have the rankings, you have the impact factor, you have the age index, citations for researchers, and all that. And there's a strong international movement to change all that and to make things a little bit more balanced for the recognition and rewards process. So, for example, the Netherlands has already forbidden the use of the journal impact factor in its evaluation processes, and the age index is not yet forbidden, but extremely frowned upon, so rarely used in these kinds of situations. So there are movements to kind of change that, but rankings still play a significant role in that. And the problems when we think about this type of strategy, these types of rankings, is that we have missing pieces, we have missing voices, regions, and missing equity. So when we talk about the missing pieces, there's the coverage problem. So particularly in the Global South, we see that the main databases that are used for most rankings, they have limited coverage. And that coverage includes problems with the marginalization of non-English research. So most major databases like Web of Science and Scopus have a very small representation of research that's not in English. With that, of course, we have the missing regions because there's a bias towards the mainstream research topics and also the local knowledge. And finally, you have the equity, because the social justice goals are unmet by the high cost of conventional systems, exactly what Joy mentioned right now. Not everyone can afford access to the database that are being used to assess them. So this is a huge problem. And when we take a look at the different databases, so for example, this was an analysis we performed for COARA, the working group of multilingualism recently. And what you see here is the coverage of languages of Web of Science. So if you look at the left, you see in dark blue everything that's in English, and you see in light blue everything that's in other languages. And on the right, you see the expansion of that small slice to see what are the languages that are represented. So we see that only around 5% of everything in the core collection of Web of Science is in English. And even though we have some representation of a few languages, most of them are very smallly represented. Same thing happens with Scopus. There's a little more in terms of other languages, slightly bigger share, but still very small. And when you look at the subdivision of languages, you see that basically the main difference is that Scopus has a larger coverage of Chinese publications, but if you consider the numbers related to what we know are there in terms of publications, you see it's a very small share. And the reality is that this is not only a problem for the Global South. So recently at CWTS, we worked with the Research Portal Denmark, a CRIS system that was developed in the country to integrate information from different databases from the universities. And what we saw was quite interesting, because if you look at their database, they matched publications from their systems with major databases. And what we see here is that if you look at what they have in terms of matching records, you see that they have around 312,000 matching Clarivate data, Web of Science, 314,000 matching digital science data, Dimensions, 331,000 matching Elsevier data, which is Scopus. But then you have a bunch of publications that are not matched, 371,000, so more than half. Of course, there's overlap in the matching. More than half the publications are not matched anywhere. And if you look at this from a language perspective, this is the list of what's not matched. So we have almost 200,000 publications that are in English and are not matched to any of these three databases, but you have over 160,000 that are in Danish. So for us that come from the Global South, we have that perspective that the language obstacle is a Global South problem. And you see here that it's not a Global South problem, because sometimes language is not a matter of capacity. It's not about not being able to publish in English, but being preferable to publish in local language to deal about local problems that are addressed to local communities. And the fact that people can have higher or lower proficiency in English is not necessarily the central point. Of course, when we look at OpenAlex, and this has been a very significant step for the Leiden ranking, you see a much higher coverage of publications in other languages, around 25%, with a much better representation. For example, in this case, led by Japanese, with over 8 million publications indexed. And this is fantastic. As Joy mentioned, it changes a little bit the perspective of representation and even the dynamics of the rankings when we're able to take a look at more where there's not such a strong restriction. And to exemplify a little bit this strong restriction, I show a study I conducted a few years ago, but it's still very representative about Brazilian output of journal art. So basically, I got the classification of the Brazilian system in 9 broad areas of knowledge. And so I had access to 100% of everything that was produced in the country. And what you see is at the top, what has been matched to Web of Science, and at the bottom, what has no match to Web of Science. So publications that are usually indexed by Cielo, by Readily, by Latindex, and other databases. The dark blue means publications in English, and the gray publications in Portuguese. So what you see is not only a terrible unbalance in terms of language, but also in terms of discipline. So if you look at biological sciences, around 90% of everything that Brazilians publish is indexed by Web of Science, and most of it is in English. But when you go across the disciplines, exact science, agricultural science, health science, engineering, all the way to language, literature, and art, you see that that proportion of coverage drops significantly, and the proportion of publications in local language, in the case Portuguese, increases exponentially. So you see that over 90% of everything that's published in language, literature, and arts in Brazil is published in Portuguese, and it's not covered by databases such as Web of Science. So this is a big problem, because when you use rankings that are based on these databases like Scopus and Web of Science, you're not seeing that part. You're not seeing all that's in the below part of the chart. And thematically, this is very important, because if you look semantically, this is a semantic map created from the around 600,000 publications that were used for the previous chart. And you see already a division in the clusters when you have on the left things such as biological science, agricultural sciences, environmental sciences, engineering, and so on. And then you have this red cluster that is the social science and humanities. And if you consider the percentage of these terms that are in the Web of Science, this is what you see. So what's yellow is most of it is in Web of Science. Greenish is like half and a half. And these purple bubbles mean nothing of those topics is covered by Web of Science on the Brazilian research. And here you have terms such as education, as democracy, as law, as teacher training, as so many topics that are very important for our society, and that all that research conducted by Brazilians is invisible in rankings that use Web of Science. So this is a problem that needs to be addressed, and it's being addressed with initiatives such as the Leiden ranking. So it's important that we do that because of these effects on research agendas. We have to think that researchers reshape topics to fit English journals. So this tends to be a problem for the Global South. You have to publish in the mainstream journals in English, so we have to write about things they're interested in, because else you get your publications rejected. Locally relevant issues become undervalued. Book publishing and national journals lose status. Homogenization of methods and styles is conducted across fields. We have problems on citations and careers in terms of non-English publications receive fewer citations because they're not visible. Lower visibility affects hiring, promotion, and funding. So researchers from the Global South particularly become less competitive in the global scenario. And we have the idea that multilingual journals tend to rank lower in Scopus and Web of Science dependent metrics. Finally, we have reinforcing cycles of marginalization. What can be done about it? So to share briefly an example of what's happening in Brazil. Brazil has recently published the new guidelines for the evaluation of research and graduate education that are going to be used to assess the evaluation cycle of 4 years that started last year and goes until 28. So the evaluation that we use these metrics will be conducted in 29. And I leave here the link for you to take a look of these guidelines. Unfortunately, it's all in Portuguese, but luckily we have good translation tools nowadays. And of course, I'm going to share the slides afterwards. But there you have a bunch of different strategies that are being used to kind of compensate for these imbalances. And I'm going to talk just about one example. That's how journal classification is being conducted, journal article classification. So basically, we know that metrics are relevant and they are important because we don't have the capacity of evaluating hundreds of thousands of articles qualitatively every year. So in the case of Brazil, we have between 100,000 and 200,000 articles published every year. So it's impossible to do that. We need metrics to help. But the idea is that you start with the method in the middle, particularly with the direct classification of articles. So it means that if you have citation information on the individual articles that are being assessed, you can use those metrics to calculate the indicators that we need. Else, you can go to a qualitative classification of the journals and the classification, also qualitative, of a portfolio where articles are individually assessed. And when nothing like that works, then you can have, of course, gaps filled by journal indicators. But the idea is you no longer have single approaches to classify things, because you know if you go to the databases, you have a slice of what is there being visible. So you can use that slice that's being brought by the rankings, by the metrics, by the citation indicators. But then you have to fill the gaps about the things that are not necessarily indexed with more qualitative classifications as well. So having an evaluation that is multi-layered allows you to fill those gaps more properly. And in the Brazilian system, another thing that's being done is that this one is the article classification system, but you also have the classification of books, the classification of technological production that includes, for example, patents, consultancy, policy briefs, cultivars, all sorts of different activities and outputs from research that usually are unseen. So they go through a classification as well. We have classification of events, for example, which is very important for disciplines such as computer science. So classifying and ranking also their events, their conferences, and conference proceedings. So the idea is you need to have representation of disciplinary variations, linguistic variations, coverage distinctions, and try to fill as many gaps as possible. And on top of that, you add a qualitative layer so you can try to see what is usually unseen. So I recommend you take a look at these guidelines. They're really, really fantastic in terms of steps for advanced evaluation. Brazilian evaluation is actually completing 50 years of continuous existence this year. So I think it's a process that, as every evaluation process, still has flaws, still has elements that need to be improved, and they have been due to new metrics, new infrastructures that allow us to evolve significantly in that. And with that, I close the discussion. Thank you very much. Back to you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Andre. And our final speaker will be from Brazil, and she works for, and thanks for giving this insightful info, sharing your insightful views on what we need to do to make our work much more diverse, how we need to leverage on various open science elements that will also help in increasing the visibility of our work, but also looking at the challenge of language. It's not a global South problem. And I really like that you've emphasized on that. It's not a global South problem, but indeed it is a problem where the national language is not English. So we tend to have more or less the same problems even in Europe. And that lack of diversity and lack of visibility has a big impact on the visibility of even the research coming out of those respective countries. So that's why when you critically look at what China is doing, it's no surprise that the CSTR's first primary support is scientific work or any kind of work that is done in Chinese. You see, because we need to really leverage on the technologies we are able to produce to promote research, even if it is done in our national language. I don't like calling them indigenous languages. They are our national languages. That's what is used to identify us. And it's really good to note that, as what Andrew said, this is not just a global South problem. This indeed is a global North problem. So our last speaker is from DORA, the Declaration of Open Research Assessment. And this is Dr. Giovanna Lima. She's a project manager and associate researcher on the metrics project for DORA. And this will be a recording because, again, she's also out of South America. And she will be talking about the reform of research assessment and its interplay with university rankings. And as she is sharing her views in the recording, we've put a link in the chat where could you please share your views on how you see open science, how open science would improve, which open science practices would aid in improving your institution's visibility beyond rankings. So start filling in that as Dr. Giovanna Lima is making her presentation. Nicole, kindly share that.
Hello, and thank you so much to Joy and the TCC team for the invite to be here with you today. Lima, and I wish I could be live with you, but I'm currently in Brazil and it's quite still early here. So thank you for watching this intervention in a video format. I'm program manager for DORA, the Declaration on Research Assessment, and I'd like to talk to you today why we must reimagine how we evaluate research and researchers and its interplay with university rankings. So the core thesis for DORA is quite simple. Better assessment produces better research. By reforming our evaluative processes, we can incentivize open research practices, promote higher quality, reproducible research, and we support initiatives that focus on research integrity. So by moving away from a reliance on highly competitive journals, we also serve to decrease publication costs, and we see ourselves quietly tied with research integrity and ethics, as I say, but also equality, diversity, and inclusion. So that is a little bit of what DORA does and why we believe assessment is so important. We have had a long time with traditional assessment methods that have been quite problematic at times. We face long systemic issues where there are no explicit structures to assess contributions to public scholarship, for instance, or recognize the value of non-traditional scholarly outputs. This creates a heavy pressure to publish in specific venues with high journal impact factors, for example, which actively limits the adoption of open access publishing, for example. So the consequences are very severe of this type of traditional assessment. The quantity and prestige focus devalue rigor and transparency, and also engagement with local communities. This reliance on proxy measures, traditional quantitative measures, also fits into a publish and perish culture that encourages undesirable behaviors such as false reporting and lack of transparency, and actually is fueling also a growing industry of fraudulent content like paper mills and predatory journals. So we see here very different types of misconduct, typically driven by publish or perish. We have from authorship disputes until actually falsifying of data and things like that. So we believe this system needs to change because if we don't, we will keep a biased approach to assessment, which is not favoring science nor researchers. Therefore, we work towards something we call responsible research assessment, which is a way to shift assessment into recognizing the plurality of research, but also researchers and the processes and the diversity of outputs as well beyond those traditional narrow quantitative metrics. And I mentioned the journal impact factor, but also, for instance, the H index plays a role in some disciplines. We then want to move away from these traditional methods and want to have a more inclusive view, a holistic view of the skills and talents of researchers that are involved in producing high quality work. So the focus is very much on the work itself, the scholarly work, and the skills associated with them. So to achieve this, we must evolve from our definition of impact from a narrow view, for instance, focus on citations, to an inclusive view that values multidimensional work of scholars like mentoring, community engagement, and science communication. We aim to make visible those skills that are connected to highly scholarly work, with such as data preparation, team working, policy influence, and we want to make those contributions and skills visible and valued. And then we also work to recognize a broader range of scholarly products. So for open science, for instance, recognizing data sets and software and pre-registration and policy briefs. So as you can see, it's a diversity of scholarly work. In many times in traditional assessment, they don't get recognized. And this is also true with university rankings. So we discuss University Rankings in our implementation guide for research performing organizations, where we distill much of what we've learned for the past 10 years with the DORA community on implementing what can work for different types of institutions. And to implement those ideas, we developed this guide, which you can download using the QR code there. This guide has a one-stop shop, action-oriented guidance, resources, and examples for implementing those approaches that I just mentioned about responsible research assessment. So if you want to create a strategy to implement those changes, this is a very flexible guide, no size fits all for research assessment. So we done the guide as an inspirational tool for you to get ideas to implement. It is discipline agnostic and also country agnostic, so you can see what works for you and your national system, and then see what can benefit you as you implement the ideas of responsible in the assessment movement. We talk about recruitment, hiring, promotion. We talk about evaluating research units. And we also talk about developing corporate communications. And this is where we directly discuss the rankings. The implementation of responsible research assessment can feel that it's constrained by the rankings, because when we focus on quality, when we focus on reducing quantity, that can lead to something that is different from what the rankings are expecting, because the rankings are many times counting outputs. And that means that there can be a tension between assessment and institutional rankings. And we feel that this is not necessarily a zero-sum game, because the reputation that folks are hoping to have from the rankings. We hope the reputation comes from quality, from teamwork, from collaboration, which the new ways of assessment foster. Previously, you've heard of open science as well, and how open science can increase visibility. And usually, traditional assessment approaches are not valuing open science. So that means that it's not a zero-sum game, that hopefully the move towards more quality work, towards more teamwork, towards more impactful, locally impactful work will also mean that you are indeed having more recognition of the work that you're doing. So we specifically discuss how institutions can discuss the rankings in Chapter 3, as I say. Each of Chapter 2 and 3 have these intervention ideas, and this is where we say, when commenting about national or institutional rankings, we encourage that institutions will take an approach that focuses on a holistic view of your institution rather than focusing only on the place on the ranking. So we very much endorse and celebrate and encourage people to join the initiative that's called More Than Our Rank, because it's about ensuring that people recognize the holistic contributions also of institutions. So the same way as we want to recognize the contributions of research as a whole and researchers as well, we want to make sure as well to recognize all the diversity and the contributions that your institution is doing for your own community and for your students and for your partners. We also want to make sure, and this is one of the commitments of our colleagues in COARA, for instance, that the rankings, the ranking criteria from institutional rankings don't trickle down to the assessment of individual teams or researchers. So encourage really that to be mindful of if you are having a strategy towards the rankings, that strategy doesn't then trickle down to the way you're assessing research and researchers. Hopefully the work that you're doing to improve the quality and to improve the visibility of your work is going to have results to the rankings, even without having those specifically used towards your research and your researchers. So we really encourage institutions to present a holistic view of your strengths when you're communicating about the rankings, instead of focusing on the wins of the rankings, especially because we see a lot of movement between years in the rankings. So focusing on everything you do, and then the rankings perhaps are a bit more contextualized. We also encourage institutions to clarify the data from which the rankings are derived, because what they are focusing perhaps is not benefiting your institution. We see that, for instance, in Brazil, where I work with universities as well through my association with Projeto Métricas, we see that sometimes we have more publications in Portuguese that are not indexed in the databases that are used for the rankings. So that can have also some kind of impact in the rankings. We also then encourage the critical reflection of the rankings, what the rankings are and what they represent. And colleagues in Claxofolek in Latin America have just launched late last year the Bogotá Manifesto, which is to protect knowledge as a common good. And they call on the community to reject the critical dependence on commercial rankings. So this is a little bit of what's happening in the assessment space that interplays with the rankings. And we do recognize and appreciate that many times we do want to use quantitative indicators. They can be very important when we have large data sets, when we are comparing countries, for instance. So what we have as DORA are principles for using quantitative indicators. So we very much believe everyone should use both qualitative and quantitative indicators. They both have their strengths and limitations. And then when you are indeed using the quantitative indicators, we have the principles to be clear, transparent, specific, contextual, and fair. So recognizing they are always proxies, not direct measurements. And hopefully they don't replace qualified expert judgment, but actually support that judgment. So as a final call to action for this time together, I just wanted to say that we welcome everyone's signatures to DORA. So I don't know if you know that. You can assign as an individual to DORA and as an institution as well. So even if you're a university or your funding agency doesn't assign DORA, you can still do it as an individual to share your support to responsible research assessment. And then you can also discuss the issues of more than our rank and support your institution to sign in more than our rank. It's an initiative by the iNorms Research Evaluation Group, which is a close partner of ours as well. And personally, I was in that group before I joined DORA as well. So it's a great initiative that have signers across the globe. And then finally, we invite you to explore our website. We have a lot of good resources and case studies and things that you can use to implement responsible research assessment. So thank you so much for having me here today. And I hope the event has been wonderful, and I wish I could be there with you. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, Giovanna. And that's it. We've come to the end of our webinar. We've shared with you a link where you can share with us how open science can help influence what is the question? Let me read it properly. Which open science practices would improve your institution's visibility beyond rankings? So feel free to, it's interactive. You just think through it and share with us what your views would be on that. But from what we've taken you through, one thing is very clear: the Global South is now actively getting involved in conversations pertaining open science, not the theoretical aspect of it, but also the practical element of it. And all this is influencing rankings. We have a voice and we are influencing rankings on that, whether it's from an open infrastructure perspective or whether it is from a policy perspective. As you can see in the trends that were shared, we are adopting open science. But when it comes to infrastructure, we are leveraging on existing open infrastructure to help increase our visibility. As I said earlier, nobody's going to do this for you. It's high time we did this on our own and we show our influence and influence the conversations. As what everybody has said, we are not saying do away with rankings. That is, it's a tad irresponsible. And I always say this very cautiously. But what we can do is influence the system. We influence the system. We had that also from our colleagues from Latin America. But most importantly, while we are influencing the system, we're also influencing not only rankings, not only in infrastructure, but also in research assessment. As you can see, there's quite a bit that is happening in Latin America, Africa, and Asia. And all of us have one purpose: increasing the visibility of our institutions, using Global South leadership, and leveraging on open science to showcase the work we are doing. Thank you so much, everybody, and I really appreciate the time that you've made to join us. Bye for now.